Let's talk about the WHO, not the band. This is the World Health Organization. This is the unelected body, and they are trying to grab power around the world, various ways, but specifically the IHR. This is the Pandemic Treaty, otherwise known as. It has a highly suspicious underlying reasons for being implemented around the world in various countries that are signed up to the WHO, not the band. And of course this amendment is going to be railroaded through, that nobody objects to it. It will go straight away through with no problem at all, and it will become law.
They plan that next year, 1 year from now, they will merge the pandemic treaty and the 300 amendments. They will be synchronized with each other, synthesized with each other, and they will be essentially one document, and they will pass next year. So they're planning to make sure they get all the kinks out and they're good to go, because they plan to go all in and vote next year. But what the United States delegate, what our delegate said here this afternoon, is that the United States is all in and fully on board with these 300 amendments as currently written, and anybody can access them at the World Health Organization website. But also they're all in on the global pandemic treaty. So the United States is for this. All the nations of the world who spoke today, they're all for it. There isn't one that's dissented. So unless we intervene, this is a done deal 1 year from today, and that's when we have an existential threat to our sovereignty, and we will lose it 1 year from today. But there is time for intervention. So as I mentioned to you yesterday, Steve, there aren't any members of the House of Representatives here. There isn't the United States Press Corps. There's an absence. There's no member of the United States Senate. For heaven's sakes, you would think that they would call these documents in to the Senate and to the House to review them. They need to do that soberly. They've got to review all of this, because this will be what the United States is required to come under. They call it an accord. They call it an accord, but it's a treaty. But it's funny, they slip sometimes and they use the word treaty, and then they say, oh, well, an accord, because they don't want it to be called into place. But this is it. We have the plan now. They've given us the timetable. They've given us the agenda. They've given us the content of the new rules that they expect us to live under. So think of it this way. It would be like they're rewriting a new Declaration of Independence and a new Constitution of the United States for us and all of the people of the world to live under. It is global governance through the platform of World Health.
People have often, in the last week or two, complained about that it's going to make no difference because of the Health Regulations Act 1984, I believe it is, which would give the UK government power anyway, and is exactly what they used for the last pandemic to lock down and things like that. So yes, that particular act of Parliament needs to be obviously revised or deleted. That's fair enough. But this IHR gives a body of organisation with power that they don't deserve. They're unelected, unrequired, and of course will become able to dictate what we do in the UK regarding health. Now, we've spoken roughly about this before, and obviously talking about the health organisation, we are risking censorship, because obviously they will not want people to know about it and what they're doing. But it is basically a pandemic treaty where they will have rights to lockdown, to enforce medical treatments, etc., etc. And of course, this is the slippery slope to global domination. You have to look at who are funding these people, which is another factor that we haven't really got time to talk about today, but you can look into it yourself. I want to talk more about how this goes, and there is a appeal for the UK government to actually discuss this in Parliament. So we all need to go over and sign it. I will try and put the link down below. And just in case you're wondering, here is the petition. I'll link it down below. This is the please reject the amendments to the IHR. And of course it has to be 100,000 before they will discuss it in Parliament. So we really need to get this done really quickly. We don't have long. And of course, if it goes through, it will be a disaster for the UK. But it is one of these things that you do that you think, nah, not going to make any difference whatsoever if I sign it. However, what it will do is show the government that we don't want it and that they shouldn't be doing it. Also, interestingly, on this story is this other tweet that came out. The executive board of the WHO, they've elected North Korea. Yeah, I thought you'd like that. It's North Korea. The People's Republic of Korea are on the board of directors, executive board. Why is that? The WEF, the World Economic Forum, UN, WHO, all of those organisations, they're all unelected and they all want power. And basically they're promoting communistic ideas. But this was very interesting that came up. This letter saying that they had a person serving on the board, the executive board from Korea. What we'll do is we'll have a look at this article. We need to fight this grasp of power. So it's the UK Medical Freedom Alliance. They're joining grassroots campaigners around the world in opposing the IHR. It is essentially a power grab. There has been no national or international public comment or vote on this or negotiation, and the public are not considered to be relevant in this. So it is basically the World Health Assembly who are making this decision-making reason for the pandemic treaty. It has to be ratified by the government. Obviously the IHR 2005 is different to the pandemic treaty because that's already been legally binding on 196 countries. Obviously the adoption of the amendments will require no UK parliamentary scrutiny. So this is where it's becoming important that we say no. So we are currently 11 months into the 18-month period. So we do have a little time to go. And of course we have the right to reject any of the amendments adopted in May 2022. Obviously we need to invoke Article 61 of the IHR before the deadline. Inaction, which is what they're hoping for, is all that is required for them to become binding. So by doing nothing, we agree to it, which is basically the principles of how maritime law works. If you don't do anything, you don't object, then it assumes that you agree. Bear that in mind when you get a letter asking you to pay some money that you know that you don't owe. It's all about, if you don't say something, then they assume that you agree. The IHR amendments are of deep concern. They will be legally binding, and simultaneously they will remove the IHR clause requiring the WHO to uphold full respect, dignity, human rights and fundamental freedoms. So basically they can implement whatever they like. So lockdowns, forced medical treatments and things like that. You have to remember that the Director General has no medical qualifications and he has the power to declare a public health emergency. He did that recently with the monkeypox that turned out to be a damp squid. So you can imagine that if they had power over the UK, they could have caused chaos for no reason whatsoever. So, legally binding, it would allow them lockdowns, masks, quarantines, border closures, travel restrictions, medication and medical examination. So, and they can do it themselves. They can declare this by just saying there's a pandemic. So this is obviously, it's going to be quite important to object to this particular thing, IHR, the amendments of it, because it will permanently undermine and remove national sovereignty in a health emergency and hand it over to the WHO, not the band, with the idea that they can implement whatever thing that they want. And unfortunately the UK would have to agree to it. So you can see this is quite important that we sign this petition, which obviously you'll find hopefully in the links down below. And I do recommend that you go and look at it, go and sign it, even though you may think like me, it's a bit of a waste of time really, because they never listen. But what it will show is that people don't want this. And of course, remember, the idea is inaction implies that we agree. So we do need to go and do something about it. There's a lot of people out there who are now aware and they are objecting to this because this organisation are going to be able to dictate to the UK people. So there we go. That's the story, IHR, and we need to object pretty strongly to it. That's it from me. Have a very good day.